Constitution was not written by a bunch of college professors whose idea of combat was a bad meeting on the tenure committee.
Right.
It was written by people who had survived a horrendous war and horrendous post-war period. And they understood that there are, terrible times sometimes, and that's what it's built for. Mm-hmm. But there were so many sunshine friends of the Constitution that we've seen the last few years are kind of saying, well, 9/11, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and since then, we've learned even more about what happened, what's happened at Guantanamo. Some of it's just coming out, and also at Abu Ghraib, and that I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly there,
Ghraib,
but
maybe.
Abu Ghraib. But since then, we've
it's the
got
same
more.
way Bush says it. It's fine.
So we've had more information come out, and it seems more and more ugly each time, and the press seems to talk about it less and less.
Well, there's been some press coverage. The American Civil Liberties Union has done a great lawsuit against the feds, forcing them to divulge a lot of the memos. But I still think we may not have even seen the tip of the iceberg.
I'm afraid that's all we're seeing, and some people have died during these interrogations as well.
Well, but it was all natural causes, like being beaten over the head. I mean, but this is almost how some of these officials have done. With the memos they've done after these people died. Well, natural causes, this or the other. There's so many different levels of lie. Mm-hmm. And so far there's been very little people paying the price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just no one has. We've had some lieutenants, low-grade people. Basically, the blame has been pushed off on them. The blame's been pushed off on some of the rank-and-file soldiers, foot soldiers.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I mean, it hasn't really gotten up to Watergate proportions. They haven't gone up the ladder and found anyone else higher up.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that there have been a number of so-called official investigations, but they've all been structured to look downward. Mm-hmm. I mean, there has not been a single truly independent investigation which would be able to take a look at how far it went.
Right.
How far up it went, how far in the Pentagon it went, if it went in the White House, things like that. And those are the things which we need to know. Mm-hmm. Because I think Seymour Hersh, the great New Yorker reporter, I'm not sure, well, either he or someone else had said that Bush himself may have approved some of these methods that were used for interrogation. Mm-hmm. I might be misquoting, I don't think so, but he's saying that's a possibility. I mean, George Bush likes these baseball cards with these terrorists on it. Perhaps he had these, it's sort of like a box score. Okay, we use this method on this, we use this method, who knows?
And we need to find out, but nothing's really being done. And the conservatives seem to be arguing, well, we don't torture as bad as the Iraqis or the Taliban.
Isn't that a great learning curve?
So somehow, it just seems the argument is it's kind of like being half a virgin. It's just like you're either are or you aren't. Once you've lost your humanity, you've lost it.
Yeah, and it's sad to see them making an argument that's almost as like saying, well, we're not as bad as Stalin.
Right.
That's great. Well, that's something to be really proud of. Put that in your tombstone.
Of course, and the obvious thing, morally, is the whole idea why we're there is because we are morally superior, and then we go there and prove that we are not.
It's sad. And it's fascinating how the dominoes of dishonesty are falling, and it is as if each abuse or debacle compels people to tell a few more lies, and they get further and further away. And the Bush folks may still think that they can spin their way out of it, but I don't think so. And it's Americans who are paying the price.
Yeah, well, we're definitely paying our price internationally with our reputation, I think, and I think it's going to be much more difficult to operate on a global level after this with the cooperation of other countries.
That's putting it very kindly. Well, and it's a paradox. Some of the neoconservatives were intensely opposed to the UN and some of the UN organizations, and the reason was that they were seen as a limit on U.S. sovereignty, U.S. authority. Well, the Bush folks have basically assumed that basically ignored the UN and other organizations and have done what the U.S. wanted to do. And it turns out that it's torture, it's war crimes, it's bombing civilians. It's kind of like, it's so great that we're no longer restrained, I mean, it's just, and yet it has not seemed to resonate yet with the American people. And that's rather, well, it's a cause of great concern.
We've lost the moral high ground so thoroughly. There's really no credibility for us. I think in a lot of quarters around the world, and I think that in a lot of places in this country, and I just see that spreading, and I see it as a very harmful thing for us. And I think that there will also be economic price to pay, besides just the cost of the war, which has been horrendous.
Yes, there's a huge cost. I think the spiraling cost of the war and the U.S. budget deficit out of control is a major reason for the fall of the U.S. dollar. Oil prices are one hell of a lot higher now after the war than before. I mean, it's fascinating to think how much cheaper oil would have been if we'd simply lifted the blockade on Saddam.
Right.
And the Iraqis could have pumped at full speed, and oil might be half the price right now.
What is, you're a student of history. What do you think is going to happen in the long run in Iraq?
I assume at some point the U.S. will get fed up and pull out, and that hopefully there's not a Islamic theocracy at that point, but it's a very good possibility. I think they're going to have a very hard time there, no matter what the U.S. government does. It's a good reason for the U.S. to get out as soon as possible, and wish them well and wave them goodbye and get out of Dodge.
No matter what, I think that when they do that, and things go badly, and I think there will be an Islamic jihad there. I think there will be an overthrow. That area really has no history of democracy.
Well, I mean, that's true of Iraq, but in Lebanon they've had a lot of democracy off and on for a long time. Turkey is a Muslim country that has a fair amount of democracy. It's a mess over there right now, and it's a very artificial country, drawn up, I guess, by the Brits and the French or whatever, in the early after the Ottoman Empire collapsed. Around then, I think. I'm not sure the details on that, but it's a mess.
So culturally, they're not really. So what you're saying is culturally, you don't really think they're a people.
Oh, well, I mean, there is not any love lost between the Kurds and the Arabs, or between the Sunnis and the Shiites. And so, it's sort of, very difficult to make a happy country there. So, and the U.S. isn't going to be able to do it, so we should leave.
What about, do you think Bush is going to go into other countries over there?
I think Bush would, some of Bush's advisors would probably like to invade Syria and Iran, but Syria would be easy to invade, but what the heck do you do with it? I mean, okay, it's a bunch of sand and some other things.
Yeah, there's another idea that people have brought up, that aren't the people of Iraq entitled to democracy? Aren't we supposed to morally help them achieve this?
It's very difficult to spread democracy at the point of the bayonet or with a bombardier. I mean, the issue of whether the Iraqis are entitled to democracy is different than what the U.S. is obliged to do. I mean, most places in the world don't have real democracies. It doesn't mean that I have an obligation to go to most of the world and fix it.
Now, also, after the election there, it seems like a lot of pro-U.S. people won the election over there.
There were lots of, I think Alawi only got like less than 15%, maybe 16%. But in spite of all the U.S. did to fix the election, or to tilt the election. So, I don't know. It's ugly. It's ugly.
So, what does this really say for the future of American intervention overseas? I mean, do you think this is ultimately, is this the last Vietnam, you know?
Oh, no. I mean, the folks who were in favor of this have basically done very well, in spite of it going very badly. Bush is listening to many of the same bad